Hello, everyone. There we go. So good afternoon. We're at time here, so I will call the University Senate to order. Item number, see if I can get this together. So welcome, everyone. I can see some faces. A lot of people don't have their screens on. It'd be great if we could see faces as people join. That's lovely. So moving on to jump right in, because I know there's a lot of business here today. Item number 2 concerns the administrative responses to University Senate actions and is presented for information. Item number 3 is a list of recent faculty and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. William Gerberich, Anand Gopinath, Keith Lodge, Fred Morrison, Zhen Zhou, Matthew Albee, Dylan Dulac, Patah, Janice, and Riley Saloom. Item number 4 is approval of minutes from the University Senate meeting on October 24th and the special University Senate meeting on November 15th. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 116 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Thank you all. Item number 5 is my president's report. I'm excited to see many of you here today, and thanks for those of you who put your Zoom boxes on. I have a few system-wide updates that I'd like to share with the University Senate today. But before I get started, I'd like to reiterate the importance of U of M administration, university senators, and our broader community being able to engage in constructive dialogue. I'll notice I've observed over my first few months in office that there at times in the complicated world that we live in, there's an assumption that either amongst each other or between the administration and faculty that we're not sharing broader university goals and that somehow we're working at odds. And I just want to call to attention, you folks are donating your time here and your service, and I and my administration are here because of a passion for the job we have and for the university community at large. And in a country that is deeply divided and all kinds of polarization embedded all across our society, I think we have an opportunity here at the university to try to model what it truly means to lead and govern with respect and with civility. And so I would just ask us as we end this academic year together to really think about how, as we engage with each other, how we can assume good intent, how we can work together even when we disagree. I'm sure you know, but I'll say again, as president, I very much see my role as a partner with you in this community. We're not always going to see eye to eye on everything on the issues impacting our university or the state or the world. But regardless of our views, we really should be able to engage in constructive dialogue that's curious of each other's positions and assumes good intent. And I will commit to trying to do my best when I hear those questions from you to assume good intent. And I would ask when you hear things from my administration that you worked also to assume good intent, listening to and learning from each other along the way. At the end of the day, I know we all want what's best for the University of Minnesota, and that's why we're here working together for an institution that we care a lot about. I can assure you that my team and I are working around the clock to advance our mission and support our community. I can look, and we can all look to places around the university, and for those of you who read the Chronicle of Higher Education or any of the other higher education or any newspaper for that matter, we can see places where the community and university administration are in really far corners from each other. And there's not much trust. And I'm grateful that I come into a community that does not appear to be in that place, but I would encourage us all to remain and strive to be different from those places that other universities have gone, and to be a community where we seek to understand as a norm through open and honest and respectful conversations so that we can find solutions to our complex problems even when we disagree. So moving next, I want to focus the majority of my president's report on an exciting journey that each and every one of you is likely to participate in over the coming year. As many of you know, our strategic plan, MPACT 2025, is winding down. And so we're at this critical time where we can come together as a university community and really reimagine what the future of U of M should look like. And I've talked about kind of the leading up to this over the past several months, but now we're really ready to launch. Next week, I'm scheduled to provide to the Board of Regents with important updates about our system-wide strategic planning efforts. And so acknowledging your important role for you and your colleagues play in this process in the Senate, I wanted to share those key updates first with the University Senate in advance of the December 13th Regents meeting. For starters, it's important to remember that a strategic plan serves many purposes. The process of creating a strategic plan can and will serve as a community engagement exercise, and I'm excited to do that community engaged work together. The strategic plan will articulate our values and our commitments and should help us improve our operational performance. It can also elevate our reputation as a leading public research university by identifying where we can make strategic investments that position us competitively in the years ahead. To identify what distinguishes the U of M from the crowd and competitive higher ed landscape. We'll have a year-long effort, and those efforts will develop a system-wide plan that will be led by a team of your colleagues and community members. This week, I'm in the process of charging a central advisory committee that will guide us forward. I'm excited to share that Dean Andrew Aline, Dean of the College of Science and Engineering on the Twin Cities campus, and Charles Nees, Chancellor of the University of Minnesota Duluth, have graciously agreed to co-chair our advisory committee. We've also identified a diverse group of individuals representing many different parts of the university system to round out the advisory committee. I'll ask people to remember for the 18 people or so that are on the central advisory committee that we're looking in that to broadly represent at the highest levels 5 campuses and many different stakeholder groups. And so it will only be one way that people interact, and every single component from every single campus and every single stakeholder group can't be on that central committee because otherwise it would be 300 people large. But with that, there will be lots of other opportunities. So that group will spend the next year gathering and analyzing information that all of you will be contributing. And in doing that, shaping what will become the priorities and strategies that support the university system for the next years to come. I'll publish a full list of those advisory committee members next week in advance of the December 13th meeting, and we'll be putting up a website that will also give more information about the strategic planning process. Well, the advisory committee will focus on organizing and interpreting input from the community. Its stakeholders from across the U of M will be invited to serve on strategic initiative working groups based on subject matter expertise. And the best way I can give an example of that is if the information comes up to the Central Advisory Committee and it gets distilled that what we need to do is have a working group on the future of window shades as a strategic goal, then we will then be developing working groups on, for example, that pillar of window shades with staff and faculty and student expertise. So there will be many work groups that get formed along the way, separate from just the Central Advisory Committee, that will give lots of opportunity for people to be contributing. As potential priorities are identified by the advisory committee, these more focused teams that I just talked about will be asked to take a deeper dive into specific themes and issues. We obviously won't have all the content expertise in one place or on one committee. So if you're invited to serve on any of those groups, I would encourage you to participate. Some of the group activities will include evaluating benchmark reports that will examine where U of M sits within the larger higher education market, consider barriers to success and strategies for overcoming those barriers, and sourcing opportunities for improvement and growth. The working groups will play an essential role in carrying our process forward, and those voices and your voices will be vital to that plan. But our entire process has been designed to ensure we hear from everyone. So the process kicks off, which will be next week, over the next months, and I'll get into a little bit of what those phases are. We'll be distributing surveys, organizing listening sessions, focus groups, and town halls across the system. The advisory committee will then leverage our U of M data as well as those community insights to help shape our understanding of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We will leverage more surveys, interviews, and a new technology called voice sessions that will then get broad feedback on those drafted goals. And then our working groups, as I mentioned, will help us leverage that content expertise into a broader array of voices in the process. All faculty, staff, and students and alumni will have an opportunity to provide feedback on the drafted goals. We also will be engaging in a random and representative sample of 500 faculty, staff, and students as thought partners in those virtual voice sessions I mentioned to ensure we're crafting goals that the U of M can actually deliver on. A voice session is an interesting technique. It's a virtual, anonymous, facilitated conversation using a set of quantitative and qualitative questions. It's just one means of gathering feedback. So to give you a better sense of the timing of all this, which I've talked about theoretically before, I will now talk a little bit more concretely, and that will be divided into 4 phases. So phase 1 kicks off this month, and we'll focus on setting this charge, organizing the committee. During this phase, we will bring the advisory group together. We will organize launch events. We will develop the system-wide surveys, and we will begin a leadership listening tour. Phase 2 will focus on a landscape analysis where we'll collect and analyze data, set a vision, and draft strategic imperatives. Phase 3, which will probably be close to next summer, we will focus on refining those strategic initiatives and imperatives. And then next fall, once again, we'll engage with the broader U of M community as part of phase 4 to finalize that system-wide plan. I'm hoping then by, probably November, not later than the end of the calendar year, we'll have a fully launched strategic plan. And again, all of this information will be on the website and on the materials that we roll out next week. So like I said, I'll be asking folks to roll up their sleeves and do some thinking. And, as we do some thinking about where we want to go, just also know that where we want to go, also, if you're choosing to go in one direction, you also are not choosing to go in another direction. So we can't go in all the directions at full steam. So, with this, we'll have to do some prioritization, and that will be hard work. So next, I'd like to clarify, my administration's response to the vandalism that occurred on October 1st in Morrill Hall. And I just want to put a few thoughts out here to the community. I want to remind the community that the actions taken by me and the administration are and will continue to be content neutral and identity neutral. The words, demographics, religions, and even the causes by those who entered Morrill Hall or violate any other policy we have, who damaged property, halted university operations, and frightened our employees, that their identity or what their cause is, or what my personal views are of that cause, or what any of my administration's personal views of that cause are, or those folks' identity, didn't factor into the administration's response. I have been consistent with you since I got here in July, that we have a set of policies and what the limits of those policies were, and that we would enforce them in a content neutral way, regardless of who and when they were violated. I can't lead by having our policies that apply differently based on someone believes a cause is just or what the university stance is on a particular issue. We have a set of policies, and those are community guidelines for which we live and work together. And those have to be upheld evenly in a content neutral way. So these actions are all about, our response is about actions that cross the line from allowable free speech to vandalism and disruption of university operations. It's the university policies and rules that bind us together into working, regardless of views and identities. And so, as I said, we will continue to proceed in a content neutral and identity neutral manner. As I said to a group earlier today, whenever any action is taken, there can be a thought that it's because we agree or disagree with the cause or with the people involved in it. But I can't stress strongly enough that's not the way that we're responding. We have had since then, and I think even today, and during, before, and after Morrill Hall, there have been many people across U of M who've expressed their views on the world this fall. They were not arrested. They did not incur student code of conduct or faculty disciplinary proceedings. And I've committed to you since I've arrived that we would continue to treat and must treat by law protests again in this neutral manner. Moving on, I want to share an update that's specific to this group. I mentioned earlier coming together to engage in open and honest and respectful conversations, and I believe this happens most effectively in person. And so after speaking with the University Senate Office and the FCC, we've decided we will revert back to our original format of in-person meetings of the Senate for March and April of this coming year. So put that on your calendar, and the Senate Office can get you the details. And then beginning in the fall of 2025, all University Senate meetings will return to an in-person format. Among our peers and across the country, university governing bodies have generally returned to in-person formats. And, I was impressed. I heard over and over again about the value of having senators engage with each other in person, how people who were on the Senate years ago built relationships there that they then carried through their faculty life. I know I would look forward to getting to know and to meet and work with people in person. I know it's a little bit inconvenient, and we can work with that for folks that are other campuses. We will revert to what I understand the procedures that worked pretty well prior, where people met in a room together and then, Zoomed in together so that they could have community in that regard. I've asked the University Senate Office to support the system campuses with those practices. I'm also open to some of the possibilities in the future of having some of our meetings held at our greater Minnesota campuses. We're a Senate across our 5 system. Again, the goal here is to help foster increased collaboration and engagement among the Senate, and is consistent with governing bodies across our peers and governing bodies in general. Once a location for March and April meetings are confirmed, the University Senate Office will open up those calendar invites. So I look forward to seeing you in person in March and in April. So I want to thank you for your time and attention, and that concludes my president's report. Item 7, I do believe, is questions for the president. Okay, so I've received a few questions that were submitted in advance of the meeting, as my staff points out. Thank you, Brianna. So the first one of those is with the claims of the incoming Trump administration to slash major federal programs and spending, what is your strategy to secure current funding streams for our current research programs and the employment of those researchers and supporting staff? And so, before I get into the the response that I have here, the top thing I would say is, first of all, we have to, there may be many changes coming, as happens with any administration, and we're going to have to work through those one at a time as we get there. I know that uncertainty is difficult. Our federal research funding is foundational to advancing our mission. And, we have over $600 million of federally sponsored research. So our strategy here generally will be to continue to advocate as strongly as we can for the importance of research. We'll do this both individually, but also along with our AAU and other university peers and our federal government relations team. APLU, AAMC, ACE, our local congressional representatives who understand the value of the federal dollars that we're bringing in. So we may be facing a different budget environment. I would also say we have a very diversified portfolio. And I know how creative faculty are in finding the ways in which their research works into the available dollars and portfolio. And we'll look together to do that. The next question that was submitted ahead of time is, on November 15th, the Texas court blocked the plan to increase FLSA on January 1st. The university had identified a plan and funding to increase the salary of the lowest paid exempt employees to meet the new threshold. When the Texas decision was made, the university immediately halted their plan to provide this funding to our lowest paid exempt employees. These are employees making key contributions. Why did the university make this decision to keep pay at these levels? Okay, and so with that, I would like to call my HR friend, Mary, to answer this question more completely. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Roman-Cool. I'm the Senior Director of Total Rewards in the Office of Human Resources, and really appreciate this question. So yes, the university has stopped the work to comply with this January 1 FLSA threshold because it was repealed. But I really appreciate being asked to be here today because we want to reinforce that we still have efforts across the university to continue to address our compensation issues. So although this has paused, other efforts have not. The pay increases that were put on hold, in our opinion, are not necessarily the most pressing compensation issues that are currently faced by the university. We do have other employees who make less than those that were in scope for this FLSA compliance related pay raise. We have employees whose salaries are farther off from market median than some of these positions. So the money that we will save by halting these compliance related increases, we could actually use that to address other more pressing comp issues that the university is facing. And the other piece of good news is that we're just now kicking off the Workforce Reinvestment Governance Committee, and there's a work team called the Compensation Work Team that will be meeting this academic year, and in fact, beyond this academic year for the comp team, where we're going to be prioritizing comp issues and comp needs. And so again, just in my opinion, everyone on the comp team as well, this was something we needed to do to be in compliance, but I wouldn't say it's our most pressing issue. Just a couple of really quick points just for background on the topic. At the time of the court decision in Texas, we were in process of reviewing each person that was earning less than that new January 1st threshold. And we're trying to figure out with each manager and HR lead if they should be changed to non-exempt or if they should get a salary increase, because either of those measures are considered to be appropriate to be in compliance. And our last estimates were that the majority of the affected employees would have actually been moved to non-exempt status, more than half. And just so people know too, it's just maybe important to say that when they reversed that FLSA threshold, it also reversed the threshold that was put in place back in June of 2024. The university had moved people to either non-exempt or to the threshold at that time. About 75% of our people were moved to non-exempt, about 25% that were in scope were given a pay increase. And we're not looking to go back and change those pay increases. So those have been put through and that's fine. But we won't be moving forward with these new thresholds for January 1.
Great.
And
Thank you
that's my
so much.
update.
Yep. Thank you for letting me phone a friend and for joining our
You're
meeting
very welcome.
with that question.
Happy to help.
Yep. I will try to take these in order then. I know we have time for a few more questions. Stacy?
Thank you, President Cunningham. My name is Stacy Maher. I am a civil service senator from CFANS. I want to acknowledge how you began your report today in the spirit of positive intent, and I share my comment and question asking for the same courtesy. When you began your report, you noted this room was faculty. I am a civil service Senate representative
I'm
and
terribly
university
sorry.
senator.
Yeah.
Nope, thank you.
Yeah.
And as a civil service senator, I'm a minority member of this body, so at times the inclusivity of me and my colleagues feels overlooked in our broader U Senate environment. The move to in-person for the U Senate is deeply concerning to me. At a quick glance, St. Paul campus represents at least 40 senators, and the time burden to travel to East Bank is a lot to ask my St. Paul campus Senate colleagues. So while I appreciate your reference to our peer institutions returning to in-person, the University of Minnesota's inclusion of staff in this environment is so different and pioneering, and for me, deeply appreciated. Did you consider this time burden in your decision to move U Senate meetings back to campus? And will the system campus support be extended to St. Paul campus representatives? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And first, let me offer my apologies. I'm aware and deeply appreciative that this is inclusive of faculty, staff, and students. And sorry, you just moved somewhere else on my screen when that happened around. And so I think there'll be more to work out in terms of the in-person components. I think, as I said, I think we should consider where we have these and that they don't always have to be held in the same place. I do understand it's more time. I think everything that we do in person is more time. I do believe in the conversations I've had, the value to the in-person communication and contact with each other is worth the additional time. And so I think we'll have to work out the logistics on the two campuses here in the Twin Cities for where they are, but I'm not committed to them being always held on the Minneapolis site. I can't understand why they couldn't also think about ways to, in the faculty senate here, maybe staff might be frustrated by me saying this, so I'm sorry. I don't know what the possibilities are, but I'm open to exploring them as we move back to in-person. I mean, it was held in person for millennia before this. And so I know that there's a way and a possibility, and it was important to probably, decades of senators before you. And I'm positive there's a way that we can do it, but I know it will take some time and consideration, some patience, as with everything when we move back, which is why we didn't do it in the next meetings, was to give people some time and also to let us ease into it in the spring, and then people can fully plan for that time on their calendar in next fall. So thank you, Stacy. Sumeth?
Yes, thank you, President Cunningham. I'm Sumanth Gopinath. I'm on the faculty of the School of Music, and also actively involved in our AAUP chapter. I have a couple of interrelated things. The first is, how much money did the administration spend on the police response on October 21st? You discussed the occupation earlier. And how did the administration calculate damages occurred during the occupation? Many of us would like to see documentation of this. And secondly, in response to your comments about being value neutral, about the way in which punishment is and consequences are sort of determined for the students who occupied Morrill Hall, I guess many of us feel that the measures were pretty harsh. 6 of 7 students were suspended for 1 to 5 semesters. There's a hold on their transcripts during the suspensions. They can't transfer as a result without losing credits they've earned and paid for. They were fined $5,500 each. In order to return to the university, they have to do 20 hours of community service and write an 8 to 10-page essay on the difference between vandalism and protest. And given that nobody was physically harmed in the occupation, doesn't it seem a little harsh to you? I guess it does to many of us. Thank you.
So thank you for the question. I'll take the top questions first. I'll try to work through them. I don't have a calculation of the cost of the police response. That might be something my administration can work up. I'm not sure. In terms of how the other costs were done, there were $35,000 in just things that were broken. So just cost of things that glass, cameras, paint, objects. There were $35,000 of just things that were broken. There was well over another $35,000 or $40,000 in labor costs for the people that were required to stop doing all the things that they were doing and then come in and fix all those things so that the building could be rehabitable. In terms of the costs, without getting into any of the details, because I certainly will not, you've read them off, is who should pay the cost? Should the other students pay those costs? Should tuition pay those costs? Should a general fund that comes with state taxpayer money pay the costs of things that were broken on purpose with intent? I'd ask us to think about who should pay those costs. I think those are some of your questions. I think there's a student code of conduct process. It does not run out of my office. It runs out of Vice President Calvin Phillips' office. It follows a standard process and procedure that has a long-standing history of working with students. They are not the first or likely the last students that somehow will violate our code. They're not always public. But student consequences and code of conduct violations do happen, and there's an office that manages those and hands out consequences in consistent with the student code of conduct violations. I do want to clarify one thing, and I know this was clarified internally, but there's misinformation there. I can't speak to specifics, but I will say our policies do not will allow students to get their transcript. That's misinformation. And that misinformation was clarified for folks. So I can understand why it was confusing, but that's simply not true. Whenever our students have a similar consequence as this, we do not hold people back from taking their transcripts and going to other places in general, without speaking specifically to this. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Again, I'm not involved in that process. It comes out of a student code of conduct proceedings that is standard, and I think in terms of there's a lot of ways to measure harm. There's also simply violations of this of our code of conduct and how we live and work together. I talked about it the last meeting. My view and the things I heard about that time, and I can say it was there are definitely it was definitely a traumatic event for a lot of my staff. Thank you for your question. Okay, I think I have one more question. I'm actually being told don't have that, but I will take one more question. So let's see, Mike.
Yes, thank you, President Cunningham. I'm appreciative of your update, especially about the strategic planning. And I'm wondering how the strategic planning is going to incorporate, or if it is, the truth report that a lot of us put together over the past few years. It seems like that should be a core piece of the planning, and I'm hoping that it is.
Thanks. I think those are the types of things, what people think should be core parts of the planning should be part of what is surfaced up during the strategic planning process. So I think, what you and others think is important, that hopefully goes into the funnel and the work of what's done for what we're going to work together towards for our strategic priorities for the university. So thank you. So I believe I'm out of time now for that. So let's see. Item number 7 is the provost report. Provost Croson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a few updates, although as President Cunningham mentioned, I know we have a full agenda, so I'm going to be a little bit brief. As you know, we continue to work toward our 10-year HLC reaccreditation. As a reminder, our reaccreditation report is due the end of this year. Our team comes next September. So we're making great progress. I want to thank all of you who were involved in that process and some of your colleagues as well. So that's been, that's continuing to march along, but is taking up, as you might imagine, a significant part of my and my staff's time. We also, as we have mentioned before, have 2 task forces that are being charged or already charged. The first is a task force that President Cunningham asked me to convene on understanding our policy around administrative hiring. I'm not serving on that task force, as some have suggested, but I have charged the group in order to start meeting, to take a deep dive into our policies, and to advise me and the president on what our policies say around authority for both academic and administrative hiring, but especially for hiring of positions that have both aspects in their position. So that group is expected to provide a report hopefully in March, kind of middle of the spring. The second task force that I've talked with this group about before, and I'm happy to do so again, is around the use of artificial intelligence in our education, our research, and our operations. So based on subsequent discussions that I've had with FCC and with this group and at the Fall Leadership Forum and with the Board of Regents and in other places, we have 3 subcommittees. So one group chaired by Carolyn Helk on education and research. She's the director of CEI. One group chaired by CJ Loosbrook, who's one of the leaders in OIT about the use of AI in our operations. And one group chaired by Jim, and I'm blanking on Jim's last name, but out of the Rio, the VPR's office, about use of AI in research. Each of those groups has about 10, 11 people on it. And the expectation is those chairs, in addition to the work the groups themselves are going to do, those chairs will meet with each other frequently to keep each other updated. And there we're asking for some recommendations, maybe by the end of the academic year or early in the fall. I'm happy to come back and talk more if people want about either those structures or the tasks or people's thoughts that could be transmitted to those groups for consideration. On the hiring front, we have, we're almost completed a search for a new Associate Vice Provost for Professional Education. So this is an individual that would report to Scott Lanyon, the Dean of the Vice Provost and Dean and Vice Provost of the Graduate School. As many of you have been here longer than I will remember, professional education used to be together with the graduate school. That split off a number of years ago, and professional education, responsibility for professional education went back to the colleges that were running the programs. On the other hand, there have been a lot of changes in the world. When we saw especially the Supreme Court ruling, and as we're approaching accreditation, we realized that those professional programs needed to be better coordinated. So for the past 2 years or so, the heads of professional programs in each college have been meeting together in a professional education council. And last year they asked me to identify ideally a faculty member who could be a 25 to 50% appointment to help them work together, ensure that they were advancing their goals. So I'm optimistic that that position is going to get announced relatively soon. And then amazingly, I have only 1 dean search this year, which kind of feels like a vacation. It's the Dean of Pharmacy. That position description is almost ready and will be hitting the streets soon. And we're looking forward to welcoming a new pharmacy dean in the fall. So with that, I'll stop. There was a question submitted in advance, and it was about artificial intelligence. So if that individual has something that I didn't address in these remarks, I'm happy to take that question first. And if not, I'm happy to open the floor.
That was my question. So, I'm Deirdre Opp. I'm a P&A senator at the Carlson School. Because a lot, as I shared in the question, so much of my value of this space is that through hearing other questions, it informs my thought. And we sort of shared our feedback sort of anonymously. So in a vacuum, is there a space where we can sort of read and see what people shared and then potentially share, sort of respond to that to contribute to these 3 groups that you formed?
Yeah, absolutely. So my understanding is Jen Goodnow had shared the document that she compiled, and if not, I'll turn to her and ask her where that is, so we can certainly share that feedback back. But I think maybe more useful would be for me to come back with those 3 sub-chairs in the spring, let them each kind of present about what they're thinking about and have a more robust discussion if time allows.
Thank you. And yes, I don't recall seeing a summary, but also a lot of emails might have missed it.
Well, we'll see if we can get that to you.
For the provost, I guess I can call on people if you'd like. So Vivi?
Hi, I'm Sugi Ganeshananthan. I'm a CLA senator from the English department. So the CLA Constitution Article 4, Section 3 answers some of the question raised by the task force that you mentioned, that in CLA, the dean has authority over hiring for centers with both academic and community-facing roles. So I'm curious, you mentioned, of course, the charge for the task force that the president called for in the wake of Roz Siegel's on hiring. And I wonder if you'll make that charge available to senators, its specific framing and language, and also any details about the membership of the task force, if its deliberations will be open to the public. And also academic freedom was originally part of this plan sort of more broadly, and I wonder how that will be addressed going forward.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I'm happy to share the charge and the membership. There's nothing secret about that. The way the committee is structured is we have, and I'm trying to remember, 6 or 7 Regents professors who are the members of the committee, plus 1 representative from the Morris campus, plus I've asked the dean of the law school to serve as the chair. In addition, we have a number of ex officio members, all of whom are policy experts. So Jason Langsworthy, who's the policy lead for the Board of Regents, Ola Graham, who's of course policy lead for the Office of Faculty and Academic Affairs, Brent Benrud, who's our faculty expert from OGC. There's 2 or 3 others. And so the idea is that those policy experts will be able to bring to that task force the CLA Constitution, our Board of Regents policies, our university-wide administrative policies, all the variety of policies that might bear on this question, so that they can help us to achieve a shared understanding of what our policies say.
Can I just ask quickly, like as a follow-up, how this is going to incorporate the actual language about how directors of institutes are appointed now? It's the language is that the dean shall appoint directors of institutes to 3-year terms. Directors are eligible for additional terms. Following consultation with the membership of the institute, the dean may terminate the administrative appointment of an institute director prior to completion of the term of the appointment, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess what's not clear to me also is just what the need for a task force actually is. Why this policy is not actually, this policy seems to me crystal clear.
So I think the question that we're going to ask the task force to look at are all of our policies, not only the CLA Constitution, but our Board of Regents policies, our hiring authority policies, again, our administrative policies, all of our governing documents, college, university, exist in an ecosystem of multiple policies, and we want to make sure that they're all consistent and make sure we all understand how they fit together with each other, as well as what each one individually says. But I'm sure that that Constitution and those elements of the Constitution will be part of what the committee considers.
Eric?
Hi, Provost. Yeah, I'm Eric Van Wyk, and chair of AF&D. So I guess I'm curious how the academic freedom component of this has gone away. Is there something that changed along the way, that it seemed like that was a big part of it initially, and now that's gone, right? So that's my concern. So.
Sure, yeah. So, as the president and I talked about this, we recognize, of course, the authority of the AF&D committee around academic freedom issues, but also realize that there was a fundamental lack of consensus about what our policies say about hiring in these areas. And that seemed to be a separate question from the question of who has what academic freedom, or even what our policies should say. We can certainly engage in a much broader discussion, perhaps with faculty governance, about what our policies should say, but we certainly needed some clarity on what our policies do say. And so the idea was to let's make sure we understand what our policies do say before we embark on any kind of question about whether they are the right policies or the wrong policies or say the right or the wrong things.
I think it makes perfect sense to get an understanding of the lay of the land, right? It's kind of confusing. I think we don't even actually know how many centers we have. It's sort of a bit ambiguous. So I think understanding this is really important. But in a sense, that seems like the first step. You know, is there a second step that then does get to these issues of academic freedom?
Well, I don't know that I've outlined a second step yet. I think let's do the first step first and see where we are.
Yeah, I guess knowing that there is going to be a second step would probably reassure some folks that it's not sort of just being cut off with one thing and we don't get to what is a pretty important issue to a lot of people. So,
Sure. No, I totally understand and we'll certainly take that under advisement.
thanks.
So with that, I believe we are out of time. So item 9 is the SCC report. Professor Goodenow, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Cunningham. I hope you're all staying warm with this welcome return of winter. It seems like the season to start out with some thank yous, and so a couple of those along the way and threaded through my report. You may have seen the announcement on the recently hired Vice President for Communication, and since there were a couple senators involved, I wanted to say thank you to Senator Alicia Cohen, P&A Consultative Committee Chair Kit Brashears, and Senate Consultative Committee Vice Chair Perry Leo for serving on that important search committee. In early November, I had the opportunity to attend the BTAA, which is the Big Ten Academic Alliance Shared Governance Conference at the University of Maryland. There was interest from our peers in follow-up conversations on our workforce reinvestment resolution, which we presented last year when we hosted the conference. There were multiple presentations on the structure and composition of those senates from those who were attending. Our 5-senate structure is fairly unique among our Big Ten peers. And compared to those presenting, the University of Minnesota is unique as well in the amount of staff that we have, at about 20% of the University Senate being staff. And many of the others that even have staff, their ranges are closer to 3 to 10% of the total voting senators. I learned in this process that there are even a few senates with voting administrators. I'm happy to report observing a touch of envy as others learned about shared governance at the University of Minnesota. There were sessions on First Amendment, academic freedom, protests, unionization, encouraging engagement with the community, communication models, and so perhaps we're not unique in the issues that we face here as well as at our Big Ten peers. As mentioned earlier, the Board of Regents meets next week, and 2 things I wanted to mention. The first is the Special Committee on University Workforce will have its first meeting on December 12th at 1:30, live streamed, so you can all join. The charge and work plan will be discussed there, and according to its description, it will be part of helping, quote, the administration chart a financially sustainable course to invest in retaining and rewarding the university's talented faculty and staff. This is tied to the board's stated priority for the year, and I think it builds off of and is related to this Senate's workforce reinvestment resolution. So I'm appreciative to those efforts ongoing related to the workforce reinvestment resolution. The second item that is happening on the Friday, December 13th, is the board will hear reports from me from the SCC and FCC, as well as an update from the P&A Consultative Committee and the Civil Service Consultative Committee. Those are also live streamed, I believe, so you can all tune in. Turning to a different topic, I have more information to share from the November 15th Special University Senate meeting on the resolution censuring the University of Minnesota Police Department regarding the improper detainment of a Minnesota Daily Reporter. You may recall that resolution did not receive enough votes to pass, and the vote was very close. The Senate office received a request for the voting record of this meeting. Following past practice, the Senate office did not provide the detailed record. The resolution offer then submitted a Data Practices Act request, and the Senate office complied with that request when it was received from the Office of General Counsel. Before providing the full record to the requester, OGC redacted the student names. In light of this, I'd like to offer some additional clarity on the behind-the-scenes work of our dedicated Senate office staff. We've noted this during our Senate meetings, but it bears repeating here that the Senate office checks the votes to ensure that only eligible senators are voting, which is why you got an email of the official results of that vote after the meeting. On more routine votes or some that aren't as close, the official vote is recorded in the minutes. So if you're paying super close attention, you may notice slight differences between what a Zoom poll in the meeting might say compared to the minutes. So we also track quorum in real time to ensure we're able to continue with Senate business. In addition, a request was made to add a resolution censuring the University of Minnesota Police Department regarding the improper treatment of members of the press on campus. This request was to add that resolution to the December 5th University Senate agenda for 60 minutes. This was a lightly revised version of the resolution that was discussed and voted on at the November 15th meeting. With much appreciation to our Senate office staff, Amber Bathke and parliamentarian Nancy Sims for their efforts to ensure we were following proper procedures, I called a special meeting of the SCC for November 25th, as final authority on Senate agendas resides with their respective consultative committees. This issue was especially complicated because at the October 24th Senate meeting, this body referred the topic to SCC in declining to discuss it as new business. Typically, when a measure has been referred to committee, it does not return to the full committee of the Senate without being brought back by the committee it was referred to, or it can be pulled back from the committee to the Senate via a motion to discharge it from committee. There was a judgment call to allow the special session of the University Senate to occur on November 15th, despite the committee referral, in order to allow things to continue to move along in a timely manner. At the special SCC meeting on November 25th, we considered the request and the committee sought to weigh the balance of this body's multiple votes versus the request of a small group of senators, and ultimately decided to consider the November 15th meeting as resolving the referral to SCC and to not put it on the December 5th agenda. In doing so, this created a path for the resolution author to bring it back to new business without requiring it to be discharged from the SCC. There were further questions raised about those actions of the SCC, and again, I'm appreciative of Amber and Nancy's time and expertise to provide additional information and clarity. I'm not sure they're willing to make a Schoolhouse Rocks video for this whole thing, but it might be worth asking. In the realm of more routine work, at the regular SCC meeting on November 18th, we were consulted on several policies which were up for comprehensive review, including drug-free university, employee absences for religious holidays, campaigning for or holding public office, military court appearance or civic duty leaves, and institutional conflict of interest. The committee at that time also reviewed the responses to the survey sent out regarding AI, which was mentioned in the question to the provost just earlier. We had shared that feedback with the provost, and I think Amber has dropped a link to that in the chat. So, turning to the agenda today, you may recall from September, I promised a December to remember. I still wasn't able to secure an NIL for us, but the topics today before us rival a car with a big bow on it. We have the task force report on institutional statements, which includes the position statements on matters of public concern policy, back for a second time and vote. As a reminder, this vote is advisory to the PAC and the PPC, which are the Policy Advisory Committee and the President's Policy Committee. The PPC is the committee authorized by the President to provide final institutional review and approval of administrative policies. Sorry, no Schoolhouse Rocks video for this either. We will also hear today an update on the core curriculum 2025 work. And while there are certainly important questions about details and implementation, I'd encourage us to be mindful of the bigger picture of what we should be doing to make sure our students are leaving us with the education they need from their core curriculum so that they are prepared for wherever their future may take them. Thanks are also extended to all involved in advancing these two important objectives, as well as appreciation to all who are engaged with those committees in sifting and winnowing. We've put both of these items on the University Senate agenda as we anticipate there are questions or comments or interest from all four constituencies. But I'd like to note that the eventual vote next spring on the core curriculum 2025 will be Faculty Senate Twin Cities delegation only. Due to the full agenda, there's no time scheduled for questions, but please feel free to reach out to myself or Vice Chair Perry Leo or the Senate office with any questions. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all a fantastic wrap up to the fall semester. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Am I on here? Item 10 is a discussion and vote on the report of the Task Force on Institutional Speech. For this, I will call on Professor Buhlman, sorry for my pronunciation, to present this item.
Thank you, President Cunningham. I'll just quickly start here to check my screen here. So, first of all, I also would like to thank everybody who kind of helped to get us as far as we got today so that we can actually vote on this today. The task force members really have put in an enormous amount of time, but then also all the people who have consulted with us through this time, as well as when we actually had a document to consult with, all the careful checking with all the people who have looked at this so that it could come to here today. I think it is in the perfect spirit of what President Cunningham earlier mentioned, like people actually working together from very different perspectives. Was a wonderful experience on my side, I have to say. So what do I want to do? I want to be relatively brief here today. What I would like to do is I would like to give you a very quick overview of what consultation has happened since this has been the last time to the Senate. So right after the last Senate meeting, this was with the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee. Then it also went to the Senate Committee on Faculty Affairs. We consulted with the Faculty Senate of Duluth, as well as with the Consultative Committee in Morris. We actually also shared this document with Rochester and with Crookston, which both later informed us that they had no suggestion for changes. This went to Equity Lens Committee and then also was consulted with the Senate Judicial Committee. Now, what I'll do is I'll just quickly go through some of the changes that have happened since you have heard this or seen this the last time in the last Senate meeting. So there were a number of kind of wordsmithing events that I will not highlight. This is just one as an example where we've formally used a formulation that was maybe clear in the meaning of the task force, but that senators felt could be more clear. And so we've made a couple of minor changes that you have seen in the document that was shared with you. Maybe a little bit more substantive in terms of content was there used to be in an earlier version kind of a 5 business day cooling period, a period after an academic unit would have voted on a statement and would have informed the voters on the outcome. And so that 5-day period was originally planned to give everybody a time to actually raise a concern before the statement would go public. But because of multiple concerns, especially also in the Senate here, we have removed that from the current version. When we went to Duluth, we found out that Duluth faculty do not have the ability to raise concerns to the Senate Judicial Committee because they are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And so for them, they do have grievance procedures that are outlined in the collective bargaining agreement. And so we have updated the policy accordingly. Probably the biggest change for those who have carefully looked at the documents that we've shared with you today, the biggest change that you will see is that we have moved procedures into 2 separate linked documents, and we have moved some of the explanation on types of statements into a document of frequently answered questions. The reason for that was really input from the Equity Lens Committee, which was much more elaborate, but I just summarized this here in like, well, the policy is too long. This is not accessible to some people. And so rather than changing the wording that has been already consulted, that has undergone an enormous wordsmithing, we decided not to change wording, but rather just simply shorten the document by removing those procedures in separate linked documents. But I still want to emphasize is by having those procedures in linked documents, they are still part of the policy. So there's really no substantial change that comes to this policy from this change. It is really just a way how to present this. But I also want to point out that this was not non-controversial in the task force, and I've heard from one member of AF&T that they kind of like this better than before. So if we would still hear from many people that they would actually really prefer the earlier version before this Equity Links Committee inspired change, I think that could still go back, because it does not actually change the meaning or how this policy will be applied. It's really only a presentation question. Then maybe a little bit more kind of to content. We had in the earlier version of this policy kind of a part that said that if somebody makes an allegation that a violation of the policy has happened, that then a statement would have to be removed from view from the public and could only go up after that investigation has happened and has found that there has been no violation. There were concerns in the Senate previously about that. And so what we have done is we have removed that requirement. However, just in the spirit of transparency, we have added kind of just that requirement that into the header of a statement, there would have to be the following green sentence here. This statement is under review at present due to allegations of a policy violation. We believe that is really just serving the ultimate transparency, which has been the basic principle that we have applied for the entire development of this policy. And I also want to point out, this shouldn't make things complicated. If there is an alleged violation about the header requirements, well, then basically a unit should just fix the header requirement, and then that's done. So there doesn't need to be an additional inter statement. In or after we have shared the documents for today's meeting with senators, there has been one concern that was brought up that said, well, there was this really good sentence in there before. Why is it not there anymore? The sentence I'm referring to is the one that you see on the screen. Nothing in this administrative policy provides for the removal of approved and disseminated statements based on statements' content. Now, I want to assure you, this is a misunderstanding. This sentence is still there. It is still there. It is in the links with the procedures, which are inherent part of this policy. So this has not been removed. And also, just if somebody maybe has not studied the policy carefully enough, what approved here really means it refers to the approval by the unit members on behalf of whom the statement is made. So there's no other kind of dark hidden approval anywhere in this whole process. So that gets me back to my overview of the consultation. I would like to kind of finish this by just with a few thoughts about the general policy. One may wonder, does this policy satisfy everybody's kind of requests, everybody's needs in every respect? And the honest answer is no. There is no policy that would satisfy everybody in every respect. However, it is the belief of the task force that this policy is an honest approach for a compromise that will hopefully satisfy a very large and maybe an overwhelming majority. On one hand, this policy is fully consistent with free speech principles and the academic freedom of those individuals of the university who are engaged in research and scholarship. On the other hand, this policy manages the risks that come with statements in matters of public concerns. Risks such as chilling expression for those who might disagree. Risks creating pressures not to deviate from officially endorsed positions, and risks misrepresenting the opinion of a selected group as the university's opinion. We believe this policy addresses that and manages these risks. I believe that this policy is a good compromise because it uses transparency as the ultimate underlying principle in every single aspect of it. And so with that, I believe the chair of AF&T may also make a comment about this policy. And so I give it back to President Cunningham.
Yep, here I go. Next I'll call on Professor Eric Van Wyck, Chair of Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, to say a few words on the topic.
Thanks, President Cunningham, and thanks, Phil. Yeah, I just wanted to say a few quick comments. As you know, this is a topic that's occupied a tremendous amount of time of the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee. And just wanted to sort of report back on what that committee has been thinking recently. So it's our sense that the draft policy really addresses this issue pretty well, right? It's about statements of matters of public concern for senior administrators and also for academic units. And AF&T really considered only this latter category, right? This issue about unit statements from academic units. And in that sense, we spent some time this week reading over the last version and voted on it. And the committee voted to endorse the administrative policy component of this with a vote of 11 for, no against, and 4 not voting. So I think this is evidence that the committee feels, AF&T feels, that this draft policy has come a long ways and very closely adheres to the recommendations that we presented to the Faculty Senate last September, and that the Faculty Senate voted overwhelmingly in support of. So we're quite pleased with how this ended up with respect to unit statements. We didn't spend time worrying about administrative comments. And there doesn't seem to be any big concerns there from an academic freedom perspective. The only thing might be that these sort of, it does allow for operational statements, and those are important to be made, right? If there are sort of external attacks on academic freedom, these are critical to the mission of the institution, and administrators should feel very free and perhaps obligated to speak out on those kinds of things, even though they may have a sort of political feel to them in a sense. We also didn't vote on the report. We just voted on the administrative policy. We didn't discuss that. Part of the report is about a board of regents level policy. The committee, I don't think thinks that's required. We talked a little bit about this back in September of 2022 and felt the board's academic freedom and responsibility policy covers a lot of this in pretty broad strokes. So maybe that's a good, that's enough, maybe not. But lastly, I wanted to thank Phil for all his work on this, and especially his willingness to listen to and accommodate a lot of our concerns as this process has gone on. So I did have some concerns about how the task force, came to be and what would happen, but in the end, I think it's done a very, very admirable job, and I'm personally quite happy with the results. I think the committee is, and that's why they voted to endorse it. So thanks very much.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to debate. If you have questions or comment, please raise your hand and send a chat to Amber, noting whether or not your comment is pro, con, or neutral. I'll defer to Amber to call on people in the appropriate order. When you're called on, please introduce yourself and indicate which unit you represent. As a reminder, non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. Non-senators wishing to speak may either reach out to a Senate in advance and ask for yielded time, or may get into the queue and ask for a senator to yield time once recognized.
Okay, first up, we have Eric Schwartz.
Thank you. I just want to say 3 things. First, I share the perspectives of the previous speaker. I think this is a good document. I certainly would support it if I didn't have to run out of my office in 5 minutes. I also really want to express a word of personal thanks to Professor Bowman. He didn't know me from Adam, and he and I exchanged detailed emails about one of the provisions of this document. His responses were thorough and almost immediate, and I just, I was frankly surprised because he was so gracious and such. I dealt with you. It was so easy to deal with you, and you were so responsive to the concerns that I articulated. So I want to, in that spirit of collaboration and cooperation, I wanted to make that point. And I guess the final thing I would say is, I did notice at least one inconsistency between the final report and the document we're being asked to approve today. So if we're being asked to approve both, you might want to make that motion subject to technical corrections. There's reference to a waiting period in the report that I frankly didn't quite understand. And so I just thought that may have been a remnant from an earlier document.
Next is Terry Caraway.
Thanks. My name is Terry Caraway. I'm a senator from the College of Liberal Arts, and I also serve on the AF&T committee. I want to echo the thanks that other people have extended to the task force. As a member of the AF&T, I and others on the committee provided extensive feedback to the task force when Phil Bowman came to visit us, and he was very receptive to the input, and I see pretty much all of it in the final version. And I would encourage senators to take a look at the original version we received and what's before us today. And it's barely recognizable. And so I really appreciate the immense amount of work that went into that. I do want to make a friendly amendment, and this sort of builds a little bit on Eric Schwartz's comments as well. I was a little puzzled when I received the docket that the motion is to approve the report rather than to approve the administrative policy. And since we're a legislative body, my preference would be that we exert that legislative power and vote on the actual policy, especially since so much work was put into it. And in addition to that, I think, you know, we send a different message if we vote on the policy rather than the report. And so I would really hope that you'll accept that as a friendly amendment and allow us to vote on the report. That is a motion to make a friendly amendment. So I need a response, I think.
I'm sorry. So Jen?
Yeah, I think I can be the one to accept that as a friendly amendment. I think we viewed the policy as inclusive in the report. And so the intent of the original motion was to, in approving the report, does approve the policy, but I have no objection to amending the motion.
Thank you.
If a second is then required, I would second that.
Sorry, I'm lost on procedure here. Amber?
I am just updating that that poll to be ready to go when we're ready for it. I don't see anyone else in the queue at this time.
I think my understanding from the parliamentarian is that it does not need to be seconded since I accepted the friendly amendment, but Nancy can speak if that's not true.
Yeah, I would just add that I think the language change is simple. It would just change from report to draft policy and procedures.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we'll now proceed to the vote, Amber. Please note that only members of the University Senate should vote. Amber, please initiate that poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 122 ayes and 8 nays, that motion carries.
Okay, item number 11 is the discussion of the recommendations from the Core Curriculum 2025 Committee. Since there is no motion on the floor, we will not observe the pro-con debate during this discussion. As a reminder, non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. The floor is now open for discussion.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting Will and me back to discuss the core curriculum draft proposal. Since last April, since we were last here, we've made a number of changes and met with many faculty, students, advisors, and others. And the committee is really excited about the potential for undergraduates to have a more meaningful general education experience, moving away from what students have described as just checking boxes to a more integrative experience that gives them more agency, allows them to go deeper in a focus area that they are excited about, and that provides a signature, collaborative, interdisciplinary experience at the end of their general education requirements. I really want to stress today that we are continuing to improve the proposal as we meet with faculty, advisors, deans, students, and others. And this discussion today is an important part of that process, and it is not the final discussion that we will have in the Senate about this draft proposal. So Katie, if you don't mind sharing the slides, we can start going through them. Okay, next slide. Great. I won't spend too much time here, but I first want to remind people of what our current liberal education requirements are. A diversified core where students take one class in each of the core the 7 core areas. And then designated themes where students take a required race, power, and justice in the United States course that was passed by the Senate in 2021. And then currently taking 3 out of 4 themes of civic life and ethics, the environment, global perspectives, technology, and society. It also includes first-year writing in 4 writing intensive courses, 2 upper division, which 1 is in the major. So as a reminder, that is our current liberal education requirements. We'll go to the next slide. This is our proposal. And with this proposal, we are moving away from a distributive model to a more integrative model that gives students the ability to choose their own focus area, something they're excited about, something they're passionate about, while still having some breadth with 6 required foundation courses and keeping the Race, Power, and Justice in the United States theme course, and also making the Global Perspectives theme required. Currently, as I just noted, it's an option, but based on feedback from many of you and others, moving to make that required. So the foundations, which we have done a lot of work on since April, and are continuing to improve, meeting with many faculty across many departments, would include scientific thinking, quantitative reasoning, the past and present, the search for meaning, societies, cultures, and communities, and creativity in imagination. The focus areas are civic life, environment, equity, or well-being. And again, students would choose one of these focus areas. They're based on pressing societal issues. And it's also important to note that if this plan or a plan like it were to be adopted, additional focus areas could be added relatively easy by the Faculty Senate. The writing intensive courses would include first-year writing, 2 upper division disciplinary writing intensive courses, and then a multidisciplinary synthesis class at the end. One of the things that we are excited about in this proposal are what we're referring to as the bookend courses. A 1-credit course at the beginning, a multidisciplinary approach to civic life, environment, equity, and well-being. I want to talk more about that in a little bit and also hear from you about that. And then a synthesis course at the end where students would be in a class with students from across the university who have been in the same focus area. So not necessarily taking the same focus area courses, but also been in that focus area. And these bookend courses would really allow students to go deeper, to be in collaboration and conversation with students across the university, and to have many multidisciplinary approaches to the focus area topics. Next slide. Okay, this is another view of what I just presented. So again, the multidisciplinary approaches, 1-credit course at the beginning. Students would choose one of the 4 focus areas, and then take one class that qualifies for each of them: foundations, take a race, power, and justice in the US course, take a global perspectives course, and then conclude with the multidisciplinary synthesis course. Classes can double count, but not triple count in this proposal. Let's go to the next slide, please. There is a lot of excitement from students around this proposal, and we're really thinking about our undergraduate students and the conversations we've had with them, because we want to provide our students with a transformative education for life, work, and citizenship. And that quote comes directly from the Boyer report. Students have told us that they view the current core curriculum requirements, the cores and the themes, as boxes to check that they don't really think again later. In this new framework, as it sort of evolves, we hope would provide students with broad ways of knowing and modes of inquiry that are needed to prepare them for work, civic participation, and life. And then it would also allow students to sort of make connections between different courses from different disciplines, increase their agency, and inspire them to examine their own values and ethics as they're tackling global problems through a number of different lenses. Go to the next slide. So since April, as I noted early on, we've been busy. We added 2 additional CLA representatives to the committee, Chris Baumler and Peter Mercer-Taylor, who've been extremely helpful, and sort of especially as we've worked on the foundations. We've added global perspectives as a requirement. Again, currently it's an optional theme where students are choosing 3 out of 4. We've made extensive revisions to creative expression, interpretive inquiry, and past and present foundation descriptions. We've examined and strengthened the rationale for change, and then we've really talked a lot about the book in courses, but that is something that I really want to continue in this discussion. You know, it is far from settled, and we want to continue to hear from you and others as well. So the framework remains the same, but we're continuing to collect and incorporate input from faculty, students, and advisors. Next slide, please. And the students, we've met with a lot of students, both at the beginning of the process and much more recently, and the student enthusiasm has been exciting. I'm not going to read all of these quotes, but students from across the university have generally expressed enthusiasm about this, really allowing them to sort of discover what they're passionate about and take an environmental class, say an environmental class that is also a literature class, an environmental class that's also a sociology class, and an environmental class that's also a public health class. They're excited about being with students from across the university, not just in their majors and colleges, and they're also excited about the potential of that signature course at the end, really allowing them to work collaboratively and show what they know in terms of this process. Next slide, please. Also, again, to sort of reiterate, they're excited about diving in deeper in a focus area and providing more meaning to their general education, again, than just checking some boxes. Next slide. So I want to focus a little bit more on the book-in courses before we begin the discussion, and also emphasize again that this is far from set in stone. And in fact, we're getting sort of the most feedback in all different directions on that 1 credit course at the beginning and the 3 credit course at the end. So thinking first about the 1 credit course at the beginning, currently titled Multidisciplinary Approaches to Civic Life, Environment, Equity, and Well-Being, this would in no way replicate the first year experiences that different colleges have. This is not a class on how to do college. This is a class where students would have large format seminars from faculty across the university who are representing disciplines across the university and the 4 different focus areas. They would be supplemented with smaller discussion sections with an instructor who would guide them with writing and discussion and other activities. A multidisciplinary approach would be embedded to these 4 complex societal issues. And again, they'd be in a cohort of peers from across the campus. And the idea is that this course would really set the stage for the rest of their general education and also have them look toward the synthesis class at the end. And then finally, the next slide. thinking about the multidisciplinary synthesis class at the end, this would, under the current proposal, count as a writing intensive class. And this class is a class that students would take with other people across the university who have had the same focus area. So it would bring them together and they would be able to show what they have learned through a collaborative project. And this would be instructed ideally by faculty who was skilled at having students make connections, but not necessarily an expert in obviously all of the disciplines. So I want to leave this slide up there so that people have a chance to grasp it for just another couple of seconds. And then finally, if we could move to the last slide. Before I turn to the discussion, and obviously people are going to have feedback of every aspect of this plan, and we really value that. But one of the things, as I mentioned, that we've been hearing most about is how might the 3-credit synthesis course be delivered? What are ways to structure the multidisciplinary approaches in the 1-credit course? And then how might the 6 foundation areas continue to evolve? But before we start the discussion, if I could just pass the baton to the co-chair of the committee, Will, to see what I've missed here.
Yeah, no, nothing. Thanks, Cass. I'm Will Durfee, co-chair of this committee that for the past 2 years have been looking at changes to the general education. And what you see, I think, reflects what potentially could be a signature experience for students at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus, in that it really has the general education portion of their education. The intent is the general education portion rises up to engage the students and have the students be passionate about the same way they are about their major. And so this is why things like this synthesis course that's entirely new, and as far as we know, no other university in the country has it, is intended to be a general education capstone course, right? Where they can take a deep dive into the multi-lenses that they've seen, their focus area. At the same time, there's we've heard from many that things like that, is A, going to be hard to pull off, and B, maybe that trade-off between having that synthesis compared to adding another area, either another foundation or maybe another required focus area, that would be a trade-off where there could be, some discussion. But nevertheless, through the discussions that we've had, both within the committee, with broad groups of faculty and students outside the committee, we're putting this forward as a possibility, to get further reaction to. So I guess turn it back over to President Cunningham to direct the discussion.
Thank you for that. And so, I might turn it, well, I guess I can call on folks here. Sarah, let's see. Do you want to leave the slides up or do you want to take them down? So
let's maybe.
There we go.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Great.
I would love to see the slide that has the foundations on it and the flow chart of how everything fits together. If I could see that one more time, please.
Yeah, I think I was going to mention.
And then while they're
Katie,
pulling that up, Sarah, did you have a question?
Yes. So I think this is terrific, and I thank the committee for all the work that you've done. I can see that this is going to be something that's really integrated and will push students to think more broadly about things. Fantastic. I do have 2 concerns about the foundations. To me, it seems like there's 2 things missing. One would be, and maybe this is under quantitative reasoning, but math. All students should have a math foundation that's pretty solid. And the other one is foreign languages. The world is not getting less diverse, and I don't see, I know that later they can take a global perspectives class, but that is not the same thing as acquiring a language. And I hear more as I have been envious of the CLA's requirement that students take 2 years of languages, and I'm sad to see that that is being jettisoned here. So I just want to plug math and languages. Thank you.
President Cunningham, do you want us to respond to
Sure.
some of these things, or do you want to?
Will, if you'd like to respond, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. The mathematics is embedded in the quantitative reasoning. It's a broader description than simply mathematics, and it's really about enabling students to wrestle with quantitative data, but certainly any, current math course that is under our core would fall under the quantitative reasoning. The language one, thank you for that comment. We currently at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities do not have a common language requirement. Students in the College of Liberal Arts do have one, in terms of their college based. And so far as a university, we, have not come to the conclusion that should be broadened to all students beyond the College of Liberal Arts. But certainly colleges are free to include that in their college-based requirements. So thank you for those comments. Very, very helpful.
Thank you. Eva?
Thanks. I would like to, I'm Eva Fondasso. I am here as an alternate for Mike Galope in the College of Liberal Arts, and I'd like to begin by endorsing the previous speaker's remark on the necessity of language learning as well as mathematics. Students come to university to learn real stuff, not to parrot platitudes. We don't have a real core curriculum as it is. Instead, what we have now is a buffet of hundreds of courses that faculty have labored to get certified for one of a dozen broad requirements. And if this plan is adopted, we'd have to do it all over again for a more vacuous set of requirements that would dilute all the subjects we teach into vague catch-all buckets like the search for meaning, which must also be sorted according to inordinately broad focus areas like environment. I have it on good authority that biologists engage in the search for meaning, while philosophers may concern themselves with the environment and so on across disciplines. So in principle, any course in any department or discipline could count for one or another requirement, provided that a faculty member sinks the time and effort into getting it certified. But what will that add up to? A set of bigger boxes to check, and those boxes' contents would be entirely haphazard. How then could any course be integrated with any other? There is no mechanism for integration or connection among the courses. And what would the contents of the required synthesis course be? This plan projects that every such course would enroll 200 students. Those students would
30 seconds remaining.
Those students would each have taken a set of different courses with only accidental overlap among any of those 200 sets, having chosen the courses principally on the criterion students always choose their general ed courses. It fits their schedule. And an instructor is supposed to direct a synthesis of this multiply haphazard assemblage. You've been told that students are asking for integration and synthesis. The plan before you would achieve disintegration.
Your time is up now, and I don't hear a question that's different than the former question. So I don't
I'll
know
be happy to speak for 2 more minutes if I'm allowed.
No, I think we're going to move on to the next person so that we can hear a wide variety of viewpoints. But thank you so much for your comments. Elijah?
Thank you. Alicia Cohen. I'm a senator from the College of Liberal Arts. And first of all, I want to commend the committee on their work. I was in the Senate when Liberal Ed Reform failed last time, although we received a strong tweak to our past liberal curriculum from that work. And so it's in that spirit. I have a few comments on feedback really. First, I'm concerned right now this is being presented without a discussion of learning outcomes from the core. I would really love it if the committee could talk about the learning outcomes that this new core curriculum will achieve, and then how these sort of buckets will be designed to achieve those learning outcomes compared to our old course learning outcomes. When you look at our peer institutions, they share that with the public. Second, as a parent, I look at this as my daughter's approaching college, and I can tell you our big time peers where our students are considering do share that with parents. And I think this is confusing right now to a more public audience, and I'd like that to be cleaned up before we have a final vote. My third comment is that I'm very concerned that there is no consideration of some really rapid change coming in computational skills, artificial intelligence, data science, and those skills are not considered foundational or part of where we think the core will need to be. And I really think that needs to be thought about, or it will be a big miss in this reform. And other points, the 1 credit hour, I think is really unworkable. It's going to be, and I think that if we need a full course of credit to explain the curriculum to students, it's probably too complex and the learning outcomes aren't clear.
30 seconds remaining.
We think that. And then the 2 upper division disciplinary writing courses, I think are a great idea. I just see more writing. Feasibility in terms of how a large major programs can implement this might be really tricky. And so I encourage some consultation on that. And that's just going to be a real resource issue. We have, you know, and thinking about how the resources would be changed from our 1,200 currently or so approved courses to this new.
Sorry, the speaker's time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Do people still want to see the slide up, or should we see each other? In any case, Sumant, I'm sorry for I have to learn your name. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Yes, again, I'm Sumant Gopinath. Excuse me. I have a bunch of questions about this and one suggestion that I'd like to make, and would like to hear responses from the committee task force co-chairs. There are some questions around the lowness of the credit count for this. This is the lowest LE credit count of any of such program in the Big Ten that affects the budget for this program, which is, you know, has been raised as a concern before. There are also, I think, with the 1 credit launch courses and to a certain extent the synthesis courses, there are concerns that have been raised that these would largely be staffed by non-tenure stream faculty. This is moving in the direction in terms of the way that the structure of the university works that it's already run counter to our own tenure code and has been discussed by the task force from the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, of which I'm also a member. I would really like to hear more about the justification for the new curriculum. I completely agree with Professor Van Dassau that in the end of the day, it still looks like a series of boxes you're going to tick, even though in principle, I like the ideas of a long-term, sort of longer range vision for requirements. And finally, because of the expense involved in this, which I'm told will be in the order of millions of dollars, I want to propose that there might be a way to do this as a pilot program. You try it out on a smaller scale first to see how students and staffing and other issues might actually, work out in that sort of context. So anyway, I'd love to hear responses to any of those things, or all of them, ideally from the chairs. Thank you.
One of the chairs want to briefly respond.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Sunath. Really appreciate those comments. Let me address the first one on the credit count. The proposed curriculum has the same number of credits as our current liberal education, which is 27. I know that there have been some benchmarking of other universities, particularly Big Ten universities like Wisconsin and Illinois and Purdue and so on. What happens is you have to look at, so first we would be the same as we are now. And what we are now is we've been assured by our accrediting agency that it's fine. So if you look at the other universities, and particularly you look at their high credit majors, and so I was benchmarking my own department, which is mechanical engineering, because we're at one of the highest. And you look at it a little closer, and it turns out that the students in those majors are taking essentially the same number of let's say, non-mechanical engineering type courses as we are at the University of Minnesota. And it comes about through double counting. It comes about through waivers. It comes about through all kinds of things, right? So many students in the university do take more than the minimum right now. And so I would argue that in fact, when it comes down to actually looking what's going on, we are not that different, if any different, certainly from the Big Ten peers. Happy to, sort of look at any particular program with any person on that, but thanks for that comment. I don't know, President Conley, that was a long response. I'm not sure if we want to go into the other ones now, or what's provide some guidance here.
Yeah, that was helpful. Will, thank you. I mean, I am
I'm
concerned,
asking
especially
President-
about.
I'm
Oh,
sorry. I
sorry.
was asking President Cunningham if she
Oh,
wants
sorry about
us
that.
to go on.
I'm terribly sorry. I understand there's a little back and forth here. I want to make sure we get to other people's questions as well. So if it's possible, maybe could you follow up separately and we could allow other
Yeah, I was
people
going to say all these, we're taking extensive notes and we intend to get back to individuals, for more in-depth discussion, because it's really hard to have in-depth discussion in this format. So thanks so much, Sumant, for those comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And I'd encourage you to follow up separately to get those answers. This is really important. Anoop? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you, President Cunningham. I'm Anoop Jani, a faculty senator from CFANS. It is excellent to move forward with innovative and intelligent ways to improve our student experience, which is our cornerstone of why we are in the higher education system. But my questions are that will we be evaluating the students' progress and experience as we make these changes? How would we know that our students are successful using this format? Will we have an evaluation matrix to understand how our students have been resourceful and successful with this approach, and our faculty have the resources to gear up the process? Thank you.
Catherine or Will, do you want to answer a question on will there be an evaluation component?
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. There has to be an evaluation component. One of the things that's fascinating about the Capstone Synthesis course is it provides an actual product that can be used in an evaluation, because the product that comes out of that course is one where you can really assess if indeed students were able to assimilate, what they've learned in their focus areas from these multiple lenses. And it does tie back to Alicia's comment where you're right. One of the things that is lacking in the proposal is the explicit list of the learning outcomes that are necessary in order to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Charles is next.
Hi, thank you. Yep, my name is Charles Rank. I'm a civil service senator, but I am also a graduate student and a recent graduate of the university. And I was a student senator 5-6 years ago when this was last being discussed. And I will say the same thing I said then. The lack of including and furthering language education specifically for critical languages is absolutely criminal and is absolutely robbing students of opportunities in this day and age. I mean, we even have a Chinese language flagship here, and the fact that we are not elevating that it boggles the mind in this day and age. And I would like to see that worked on in the future. And to say that, in the College of Science and Engineering, I remember that being the case made last time that, these majors don't, require language studies as much. I completely disagree with that. I'm in CSE and it is eminently useful. Apart from that, I was interested in what Professor Van Dassau had to say. I would like to offer to yield the rest of my time. Should be like a minute or so. I don't know if she's would like.
He wants to yield his time to the person who had a question before. Wanted to finish? I'm sorry, I don't know who that was.
Thank you very much, Charles. And thank you for your remarks as well. As you can tell, I don't have a question for the co-chairs. I am urging my colleagues to reject this proposal. You've been told that other institutions are moving in the same direction. They all have their salespeople, colleagues who've accepted this assignment, papering over the intrinsic incoherence of this kind of plan with claims about integration, multidisciplinarity, and synthesis. If that's what we really want, then we need to instead develop and adopt a real core curriculum on the model that Columbia University has successfully employed
30
for many
seconds remaining.
You have, moreover, been told that we've got to change the core curriculum because it's in place for decades. Its structure has been, but not its contents. We continually develop new courses and revise existing ones. Who among us is teaching exactly what we taught 20 years ago? And finally, you may be told by the proponents of this plan that the process of getting courses approved will be less onerous than the current process. Don't buy it. Every time this body has endorsed such a curricular regime, it has proven to be a straitjacket on teaching and learning.
Thank you for your comments. Next question is David.
Am I allowed to make a comment rather than a question?
Yes.
Okay. I guess my comment is basically that there's always a trade-off between allowing students to develop their own interests and prescribing particular paths for them. And I tend to want to allow students more freedom to develop their own interests. The part of this plan that I'm particularly concerned about is the 3 courses in the focus area followed by an integrative course. I might prefer to allow students, and that is not all student interests that students would have outside of their major will fit into those 4 areas. And I'm much more inclined to let students figure out for themselves what they're interested in, rather than adding another 4 courses. When we talk about box checking, I think the feeling that students are checking boxes is generally because they have requirements that are too hard to fit into their schedule or to meet in some way. And that if you want students to develop a passion about a subject, you have to picture them as people with interests of their own and then allow them to develop them. And if a student has a particular interest in equity or environment or civic life for well-being, it'll fit perfectly into this, but that simply won't be true. I am glad that the program has some focus on citizenship, but this is becoming a focus on citizenship issues that's so large that particularly for engineering students, I teach in the College of Science and Engineering, it would make it very difficult for them to develop any interests other than the ones that you've prescribed. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next up is Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I had a question regarding the single credit classes. I have some concerns regarding labor. I'm wondering, I come from a very small department. I think of CLA and the burden that's placed on faculty there. These single credit classes do not count towards our course load. It would be an overload. Compensation is very low. A 1 credit class typically around $2,500. And so my guess is that a lot of this labor for teaching these courses would fall to adjunct labor, contracted labor. And so I would love to hear from the committee their thoughts around how this would happen. Another concern for me in relation to this is thinking about already the graduate student union and their labor issues that they've been bringing up. And so, I just think it's a lot to ask for our undergrads to go through these 2 single credit classes, wondering who will teach them, because I know in our department and in a lot of the CLA departments, it would just not be practical for faculty to do so. Thank you.
Do the co-chairs have any comments to that? Just for consideration, perhaps for later.
Yeah, no, thank you. We appreciate those comments. And definitely the idea is not to turn either the 1 credit class or the 3 credit class over to adjuncts. The committee has talked about this a lot. And the idea is also not to force any department to come up with a certain number of people who would be teaching these classes. So we hope and expect, and we have heard some faculty who are interested in teaching either the 1 or the 3 credit courses, but it would be faculty volunteering to do these things and then being compensated for doing so. So we would not say to, the idea would not be to say to departments, you need to come up with a certain number of people by any means. And so we've also talked about, different iterations of this, sort of what is the role of graduate student teaching assistants. For some departments, this might be helpful. For other departments, it might not be helpful at all. And so again, there's no intention to sort of force any department to do something that is not good for that particular department, given where it is. But this is also, as Will said earlier, these are where we're getting the most questions and continuing to think this through. Everything in terms of, size of sections, size of seminars. We really envision that 1 credit class at the beginning as, large, but a seminar, where students are hearing from faculty who are doing research in these various areas. And yes, it would be exposing students to all these areas, but not because we think it's so complicated that it's going to take take a 1-credit class to figure it out. The majority of the class would be very substantive and sort of an intellectually engaging experience, but we are still listening to feedback and trying to think these things through. And so these comments are helpful.
Thank you. Kate?
Thank you, President Cunningham. My name is Kate Paisani. I'm a faculty senator from CLA. I just want to support my colleagues who have discussed the importance of languages for the core curriculum, and also my colleague who talked about the importance of students being able to discover what they're interested in through the core curriculum. And to that end, I have a question. I wonder if the committee has considered allowing one foreign language course be able to fulfill the Global Perspectives requirement.
Go ahead.
Just briefly, the Global Perspectives requirement and the Race, Power, and Justice in the United States requirement, as of now, in the draft proposal, nothing has changed about those requirements. And so, as in the current curriculum, it's possible that a course could be sort of taught in, Global Perspectives in 2 languages, but this is a helpful suggestion that we'll need to sort of keep working on. So thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Deirdre Opp, Carlson, PNA Senator. In the current Carlson revised curriculum, we are very heavy in year 1 with 1 and 2 credit classes. And one of the pieces of feedback from our first year students is that taking the same amount of credits in a bunch of smaller classes is significantly more work than taking it. It's very similar to the colleague who brought it up as teaching. It's really the same for both. Teaching a 1-credit class is not dramatically less than teaching a 2- and 3-credit course, and same for students. And so I'm just sort of concerned if our college is like many other colleges kind of doing that with a lot of classes, that we're adding a burden onto students that really in that first year when we're trying to look for retention and student success, we are inhibiting that rather than supporting that.
Thank you for the comments. Any reaction from the co-chairs there, or should we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for that comment. I mean, one of the ways of thinking about the proposed multidisciplinary approaches, that first 1 credit at the beginning, it's kind of like a department seminar, right? So if you imagine, going to talks, really interesting talks from experts in the community or faculty experts. And I think the Kuski lecture, the annual Kuski lecture that the College of Design recently had, that had same topic around design, but they had the head of design at MoMA plus one of our faculty experts in children's literature and one of our geologist faculty members, all kind of talking about same thing from different perspectives for an hour or so. Those are the kinds of things that would form the basis of this 1-credit seminar course, but absolutely recognize that, we have to be careful that we are not, overburdening the students. So thanks for that comment.
Thank you, Robert.
Hi, Bob Goldstein, Carlson School. I would just like to say, in all due respect, I think we are confusing what is in the best interest of students and what is the taste of this committee and previous committees. I'd like to consider the possibility of eliminating all university requirements, allow the deans of each college to choose. They have a much better idea of what is best for their students. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment, not hearing a question. I'll move on to Sarah.
Hi, yeah, Sarah Buchanan, and I am a French professor on the Morris campus. And I just want to respond to a previous speaker's comment that maybe 1 language class could count as global perspectives. As a foreign language instructor, I recognize and want everybody to be aware that all language communicates culture. So 1 semester does have some global perspectives in it. But after the first year of language, a student can basically order stuff in a restaurant, right? And their ability to talk about complex global issues is not developed really until their 3rd year. And so 1 class in a foreign language would be grossly insufficient if you want students to have a really deep understanding of global issues. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Again, not hearing a question. I'll move on. It looks like we have another question from Bob. I think we have time. Yeah. Did that go down? Mistake? Okay. Alicia?
Just one piece of information related to languages. There's now technology that you can literally wear in your ear to translate simultaneously and to help have a conversation. Technology is going to change language acquisition as well. This is why I think really focusing on the learning outcomes could be really helpful for guiding curriculum, because it's that strong cultural connection. And there's other things like linguistics and the way language works that might be really important for students to understand. So I just want to point that out. And then the second thing is we've had multiple meetings and there really is no stomach for this one credit hour. So I hope that that is being heard after all these meetings.
Okay, I believe that finishes our questions. I want to thank the speakers for bringing that forward and for the presentation forward on this important topic. I've come to learn that this came up 5 years ago, and now here we are again, and I'm confident that the faculty will find a path forward. Do I see another question from Sarah here before I move on?
I'm sorry, but just more of a comment, I guess, because it is true that there are automatic translators out there, but we should never give over our communication to a machine and just trust what they're saying to be accurate. Translators can be good and they can be horrible. You know, AI can also generate a report on global issues. Maybe we don't have to think about those either, right? I think learning a language is really, really good for your brain. It creates all kinds of neural networks, which lead to, in fact, on average, a 5-year delay on the onset of dementia and Alzheimer's and all kinds of things. So I just wanted to respond that having the automatic translators is not any better than having an AI program generate papers for students. And I think they need to learn the actual language. Thank you.
I'm cognizant that we're going to be over time here shortly. This meeting was supposed to end at 4:30. Next meeting starts after that. I don't know, maybe can Jen or Amber, do you have suggestions? I want to make sure that we stay on time. Do we have time for more questions or no?
Trying to look and see if Ned has dropped anything in the chat. I might suggest Julia has not spoken yet. And so if she were given the opportunity and just decided that is the last comment as someone who hadn't spoken, I might suggest that.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion and for guidance. So with that, Julia, and then we'll make this the last comment so we can try to stay on time.
Thank you. I'm Julia Lujan. I'm PNA faculty senator from CLA, and I teach Spanish at the beginner level. I want to reiterate the importance of language instruction and being part of the core curriculum. I think there is a very important distinction to be made about learning a language outside the classroom using technologies, but that's a very, very limited way of understanding what language instruction really entails. And so much of what we do is not limited to teaching the language, but about teaching cultures, teaching about the peoples that speak the language, about the peoples that speak the language outside our country and in our country. So it's so important that language instruction at all levels becomes part of this core curriculum program. And I understand that the university does not have a language requirement at this time, and maybe then this discussion needs to be part of a larger discussion. But I do think that is integral to students' education when we think about students as citizens of the world. Thank you. And if I have extra time, I would love to give that time to Eva. Thank you.
I think we're about out of time here now if we're going to finish our meeting on time, but I do think we've captured the full, the full flow of comments and gotten these ideas across, which are really important ideas to be exchanged. And I applaud the thoughtful comments as well as for our speakers for bringing them forward. So with that, we're going to move on. Item 14 it concerns old business, as there's no old business for the University Senate. Item 15 concerns new business for the University Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? Scott?
Thank you. I acknowledge that your earlier statement about changing the modality of these meetings was probably in good faith to engage, and I look forward to engaging with you in person on campus as well. However, I believe the change in modality in accordance with the bylaws is at the discretion of SCC. And then you get to approve the SCC's recommendations for time and place. And so I was just wondering if there could be a clarification on that, either from yourself or the Senate office, and how that process will go forward. And then I would encourage a discussion of this body before any changes are made.
So I might need to ask Amber for guidance there. We might have to get back to you. I was informed that that was not the procedure for deciding this. Unless somebody from the Senate office has information immediately, I think we might have to follow up. Jen or Amber? And this isn't new business, I guess, actually, is the other question. So if I can get some help with protocol.
I think this may be a point of order of some sort, which seems relatively, it's not quite a point of order, sorry, but it seems appropriate to say we might need to look into this.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to look into it. Certainly not looking to not follow protocol. Okay. Hearing no other new business, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Amber, please do the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And a last call.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It just appears that the poll is not, there's nothing clickable. It's a blank screen.
Well, we have 117 ayes and 0 noes.
Okay. Okay. Must be me.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Not the motion carries. With that, we are adjourned, and the Faculty Senate meeting will commence at 4:30. So immediately. Thank you. Looks like we stayed on time. So is it a different Zoom? Okay. Okay. With that, moving to keep us on time, which I am doing so because I most certainly have a hard end stop here. I will now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to the Faculty Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 3 is approval of minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on September 26th. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 70 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Item 4 concerns the Committee on Committees. Professor Safner is here to say a few words on behalf of the committee. Professor Safner, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I won't take up much of your time. I just want to introduce myself first. I'm Missy Safner. I'm a clinical professor in the School of Nursing, and I'm the director of the Nurse Midwifery program within the School of Nursing. I'm here on behalf of the Committee on Committees. Our chair is Ian Riggenberg. So we are, the Committee on Committees, if you're not familiar with it, is responsible for putting great and thoughtful staff and faculty on the committees that consult with administration on a number of issues across our campuses, but we can only do it if we have people who are interested. And right now we have multiple faculty vacancies on a number of committees, including the All University Honors Committee, Campus Safety, Intercollegiate Athletics, the Library Committee, Senate Research Committee, and even the Committee on Committees. So if you like cool names, that's the committee to join. The way you express interest is by filling out the interest form on our website for one of the committees or the dozens of others that will have openings beginning the fall 25, which is, I know, a far way to think about. An email will go out to all faculty, P&A, and civil service staff next week with details on how to apply. But we would really appreciate it if you could provide a personal touch by talking with colleagues or anyone you think might be a great fit for the university committees. We are always looking for great people, and we're lucky to have passionate people who volunteer. And that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
So,
Have a great day.
item 5 is the FCC report. Professor Goodnow, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I would just call attention, Amber dropped the link in the chat that refers to the Committee on Committees interest site as well. So thank you, President Cunningham. I'd like to report that on November 4th, the FCC had a brief conversation with Provost Croson to learn about plans regarding expected protests for the election on November 5th. Our discussion was mostly focused on support spaces and resources that were going to be available to students and other members of the community. In mid-November, there was a request made to the Senate office from a senator for the video from the October 24th FCC meeting. Following established Senate office procedures, the request was denied as any Senate committee videos are only available to committee members who have missed the meeting and only prior to the minutes being available. A request was then made by a committee member who was also denied as they had been present at the meeting and the minutes were available. Finally, a Data Practices Act request was made by the Minnesota Daily for the meeting video, and the Senate office worked with the Office of General Counsel to provide that video. Earlier in her report, you heard Provost Croson mention the upcoming Task Force on Administrative Hiring. This task force was first proposed by President Cunningham following the controversy over rescinding the offer to Roz Segal. As evidenced by the earlier questions, there are faculty who remain extremely concerned about threats to academic freedom in the wake of that situation and continue to question the role of the provost in forming that task force. The FCC leadership was consulted regarding suggestions on membership and charge, and I think this task force has the potential to be above reproach and as such help rebuild trust in our hiring processes by developing a shared understanding of our existing policies. We look forward to watching the work of this task force closely, and I think the provost indicated that the charge and membership will be available shortly, so I would encourage you to watch for that as well. The FCC met on November 7th, where we discussed the openness in research and holds on records and registration holds on records and registration and withholding diplomas and official transcript from students policies. We also were joined by Vice Provost and Dean of the Graduate School, Scott Lanyon, who gave us a report on graduate faculty value statements and the work of that committee. We provided feedback on the aspirational statement that is being drafted for graduate faculty, which emphasizes respect, inclusivity, humility, and professional integrity in interactions between mentors and their graduate students and postdocs. We also met at that time with Professor Francis Holman and Don Dangle, who are the faculty athletic reps, and Athletic Director Mark Coyle to discuss faculty oversight and some of the upcoming changes in college athletics. We discussed the evolving role of shared governance in athletics, updates on name, image, and likeness policies, and ongoing lawsuits related to direct payments for student athletes. The FCC met on November 21st in person and had conversation with President Cunningham, hearing updates from her on the state budget request, consolidating some efforts around the planning and work at the St. Paul campus and possible work to have a strategic vision for that campus, and the overall strategic planning process. We also had a chance at that meeting to ask questions and provide feedback to Will Durfee and Catherine Pearson on the core curriculum, which we just heard a lot about earlier at the University Senate meeting. We also met earlier today, where we consulted on the conducting research with human embryos or pluripotent stem cells policy, and we had another conversation with President Cunningham. Thank you. This concludes my FCC report.
Thank you. Let's see. Item 6 concerns the proposed academic calendar for the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses for 2028 and 2029. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Amber, can you initiate the poll?
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. Last call. With 76 ayes and 2 nays, that motion carries.
Item 7 concerns revisions to 2 educational policies. If there's any discussion. Seeing no discussion or interest, Amber, please initiate the poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 53 ayes and 7 nays, that motion also carries.
Item 8 concerns minor revisions to administrative policy, faculty development leaves. Is there any discussion? No discussion. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 69 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Okay. Item 14 concerns old business. There's no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 15 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? Seeing no new business, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Amber, please initiate the poll.
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 86 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Great, wishing you a peaceful rest of the semester and a good winter break. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.